Number 1.
Abramovitz was last seen on Bickford Drive in Morristown, New Jersey on May 3, 2001. He has never been heard from again. He loves mountainous areas and rock climbing. His cellular phone records proved he made calls from Burlington, Vermont, or possibly received calls from the area shortly after he vanished. He discussed a bridge over the Quechee Gorge in Quechee George Village, Vermont, prior to his disappearance. Abramovitz left a suicide note behind. He also gave one of his paintings and some of his personal belongings to a friend. Abramovitz emptied his New Jersey bank account as well. Authorities have searched the Quechee Gorge several times, but they haven't recovered evidence pertaining to his case. His sister shared stories about the western United States with him prior to his disappearance. Abramovitz's relatives suggested he grew tired of the East Coast lifestyle and may have traveled west, possibly near Wyoming. His family hopes he began a new life somewhere outside of New Jersey and did not die by suicide. The theory remains unsubstantiated. A search of hospitals and shelters in the area produced no additional evidence in Abramovitz's case. He graduated from Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey in 2000. He is a writer and an artist. Abramovitz previously worked with Seeing Eye Dogs. His case remains unsolved. Some agencies give the date of his disappearance as May 4, 2001.
Number 2.
Ofer's parents, Oshrit and Sharon Ben-Haim, are both from Israel. They moved to the United States in 2004 and began living together in 2006. They married in Israel in 2008, then returned to the United States to live in an apartment in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Ofer was born there, making her an American citizen. Oshrit was attending Manhattan Community College on a student visa, while Sharon worked and was the sole provider for the family. The Ben-Haims' marriage ran into problems because Sharon was more religious than his wife. On March 25, 2010, the entire family traveled to Israel to celebrate an extended Passover holiday with family members. Oshrit and Sharon didn't spend much time together. Sharon stayed at his mother's house, and Oshrit and Ofer stayed at Oshrit's parents' house. Oshrit initiated divorce proceedings against her husband in a rabbinical court and sought to keep him and Ofer from leaving Israel. Sharon and Oshrit began negotiating a divorce settlement, but neither of them had signed a binding contract before Sharon's scheduled return to the United States on April 20. He stated he expected Oshrit and Ofer to come back to the U.S. on June 20, something they'd agreed before their visit to Israel. Although they had plane tickets purchased in advance, Oshrit and Ofer never made their flight. A felony warrant for kidnapping was issued for Oshrit on December 21, 2011. In August 2010, 2.5 years after she took Ofer to Israel, New Jersey authorities indicted her on 6 counts of custodial infrance and 2 counts of violation of a court order. Photos of Oshrit is posted with this case summary. Her date of birth is November 5, 1981, making her 28 years old at the time of Ofer's abduction. She's described as Caucasian, 5'1" and 95 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. A New Jersey court ordered Oshrit to return Ofer to the United States immediately, but she ignored the order, and they can't enforce it since Israel is outside their jurisdiction. Sharon attempted to have Ofer returned to his care through the Israeli courts, but they demanded he present himself in person at the hearings. He left his job and his life in America, traveled to Israel and stayed there for 4 months to work with the court system. An Israeli judge ordered that Oshrit to go back to the United States with Ofer and also ordered Sharon to rent an apartment for his wife and deposit $6,000 for her use. Oshrit appealed the order, and an appeals court upheld the ruling but changed the deposit sum from $6,000 to $10,000. Oshrit took her appeal to the Israeli Supreme Court, which ruled unanimously that she'd unlawfully abducted her daughter. However, the court also ruled that Ofer should stay in Israel and her father should go there to pursue the custody case. An American judge examined the Israeli Supreme Court ruling and determined they'd acted against the Hague Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction, a treaty both Israel and the United States signed. Sharon has had only sporadic contact with his child since 2010, and he hasn't seen her at all before her first birthday. Oshrit has refused to return her to the United States in spite of numerous court rulings against her in both the United States and Israel. The child's case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Baggett was heard from May 1, 2019. She lived with her parents in Jersey City, New Jersey. Her father had contact with her by text message in the early morning hours. Baggett's text said she was fine and did not want to be bothered and that she would return home on May 3. She never did, however, and has never been heard from again. Baggett's family does not think she actually sent the texts originating from her phone. The texts were written in poor English, and her English was fluent. She was born in Vadodara, Gujarat, India and moved to the United States in 2016 to further her education. She studied for a few months at the University of New Hampshire, then transferred to the New York Institute of Technology in New York City. She had nearly completed her coursework for a master's degree in electrical engineering and had already secured a job in California that she was supposed to start after she graduated. Because Baggett has friends in South Plainfield, New Jersey, it's possible she may be in that area. She is considered missing under suspicious circumstances and her case remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Black was last seen on February 24, 1996, in Newark, New Jersey, where he boarded a Kiwi Airlines plane to fly to West Palm Beach, Florida. Black owned a school bus company, the Frank L. Black Bus Service, and was considering selling some of his buses to a client, which is the reason for his trip to Florida. He has never been heard from again. Investigators believe Black was murdered by one of his business rivals and former friends, Alan Mackerly. A photograph of Mackerly is posted with this case summary. The two men became friends in their youth, but their relationship collapsed when Mackerly started his own rival school bus company, Byram Bus Line. Black was not popular in the school bus community in the 1980s. He underbid competitors to gain control of their routes and allegedly committed many school district violations. In 1995, when Black got a major contract instead of Mackerly, Mackerly said he was going to bury him. In late February 1996, Black began receiving telephone calls from a woman who called herself Mia Giordano. She claimed to be involved in an export business and wished to purchase 60 conversion vans from Black. She was willing to stay on hold on the phone for a long time rather than leave a callback number, which Black's employees thought was odd. Black had been planning to sell his business, but he decided to meet with Giordano for one last business deal before his retirement. Then he vanished. Black's daughters, one of whom is married to a New Jersey State Police detective, reported his disappearance after he failed to contact them once he reached Florida. Police investigating his disappearance examined his phone records and discovered that the calls from Mia Giordano were actually from Alan Mackerly and his mistress, Lisa Costello. A photograph of Costello is posted with this case summary. She refused to cooperate with the investigation, even after being jailed on contempt of court charges. The investigation got a break when Bill Anderson, one of Mackerly's closest friends, contacted authorities through his attorney and said he had information on Black's disappearance. Anderson said he had an arrangement with Mackerly where he would pilot Mackerly's plane for him and also be allowed to use it for himself. One day Mackerly asked Anderson to pilot the plane because he needed to look for something in the ocean. He said Black was missing and he thought he might be in the water. Anderson said he asked Mackerly if he had killed Black, and Mackerly allegedly replied that he had. Mackerly said Costello had met Black at the airport and taken him to Mackerly's home, where he then shot Black in the head, wrapped the body in a tarp, and dumped it in the ocean, along with the gun. Anderson agreed to cooperate with investigators and wear a recording device on his person and get Mackerly to confess again. Mackerly did not confess, but he was arrested and charged with murder anyway. While in jail in May 1997, he allegedly tried to hire cellmates to kill Anderson. Mackerly was charged with solicitation of murder but never prosecuted, and Anderson and his wife entered the federal witness protection program. Mackerly was convicted of Black's kidnapping and murder in Vero Beach, Florida in 1998. Costello, who admitted to bringing Black to Mackerly but was not present when the murder occurred, was also charged with kidnapping and murder, but she pleaded no contest to false imprisonment and manslaughter and received a 10-year sentence. She got credit for time served and was released from prison in 2004. In 2001, Mackerly's convictions were overturned on appeal. An appeals court found that Black's disappearance did not meet the criteria for kidnapping because he traveled to Florida voluntarily. In Mackerly's second trial, the jury could not agree on a verdict and a mistrial was declared. Mackerly was tried a third time in 2003. He admitted to luring Black to Florida but said he did not intend to murder him and that Costello actually killed him in self-defense. He was convicted of murder on March 15, 2003 and sentenced to life in prison. Black's body has never been located and neither has the alleged murder weapon. He is a native of Andover, New Jersey. Foul play is suspected in his disappearance due to the circumstances involved.
Number 5.
Rosemary was last seen at her family's home in the 90 block of Center Avenue in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey at 6 p.m. on August 25, 1969. Her mother gave her $2 and sent her out to buy milk and ice pops for the family's dinner. The store was only 2 blocks away, and Rosemary was expected to return home within a few minutes, but she never arrived. She has never been heard from again. Her mother reported her disappearance to the police 2 hours after she was last seen. Rosemary is the youngest of 4 children and the only child still living with her parents by the time of her disappearance. She had only recently started dating, had no steady boyfriend, and was generally kept very sheltered by her family. She was not allowed out at night without being accompanied by her parents, and she was afraid of the dark. At the time of her disappearance, her father was in poor health and had taken leave from his job as a result. Rosemary assumed many household responsibilities, including shopping for groceries and paying bills, due to her father's illness. Her parents never believed she ran away from home, as this was extremely uncharacteristic of her behavior. When authorities canvassed the area, they found 4 of Rosemary's high school classmates who claimed to have seen her riding in a car with a stranger, an older male. The vehicle was described as a beat-up black and white Ford Galaxy convertible. The boys followed the car in their own vehicle for a few blocks because they were curious about seeing Rosemary with an older man. The police made a composite drawing of the unidentified man based off the boys' descriptions. After this sighting was reported in the newspapers, a woman told investigators that a man who closely resembled the sketch and drove a similar car had offered a ride to her 12-year-old daughter and her daughter's friend. He made the offer on 3 separate occasions and also offered to give the girls some wine. The girls had memorized the vehicle's license plate and police determined it belonged to Robert Zorinsky. Photographs of him are posted with this case summary. Zorinsky had a history of antisocial and criminal behavior dating back to his childhood and was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. After linking him to Rosemary's disappearance, authorities arrested him for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This charge was connected to his allegedly offering alcohol to the 2 underage girls, but police believed he had also harmed Rosemary. He was seen washing the trunk of his Ford Galaxy after Rosemary went missing, something he rarely did. When authorities inspected the car, the window and door handles on the passenger side were absent. One of Rosemary's hair clips was found on the floor of the vehicle, and in the backseat was a pair of blue women's panties. Rosemary's mother identified the panties as her daughter's, but Zorinsky's wife stated they were her own. A ball-peen hammer with a blood-stained hair stuck to the end was also located. After his arrest, Rosemary's 4 high school classmates identified Zorinsky as the man they had seen with her on the evening of her disappearance. While he was in jail, he allegedly confessed Rosemary's murder to a cellmate and said no one would ever find her body. Zorinsky was convicted on the charge of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, but his conviction was overturned on appeal and he was released. The FBI analyzed the bloody hair found in his car and linked it to another teenager, Linda Balabino, whose body was found in the Raritan River in Port Reading, New Jersey 4 months before Rosemary disappeared. She had been strangled with an electrical cord. Authorities suspected Zorinsky had killed her and also murdered Joanne DeLardo and Donna Carlucci, 2 teenage girls from Woodbridge Township, New Jersey, who were both also strangled with an electrical cord. There was not enough evidence to prosecute in any of the cases, however. In 1974, Zorinsky was charged with Rosemary's murder on the basis of circumstantial evidence. He was convicted in 1975 and sentenced to 98 years in prison. He was the first person in the state of New Jersey to be convicted of murder in a case where the victim's body had not been found. In 1999, he was additionally charged with murder in the 1958 shooting death of Charles Bernesky, a police officer. He was acquitted, but Bernesky's widow won a $9.5 million civil judgment against him in 2003. At one of his parole hearings, Zorinsky stated he had killed Rosemary accidentally. He said he had driven her to a local lover's lane and she had gotten drunk and left his vehicle to relieve herself and he accidentally backed over her and killed her. Prior to making this statement, for years he had denied having even ever met Rosemary. In April 2008, he was charged with murder in the 1968 death of a 13-year-old girl, Jane Durua. She had been raped, beaten and strangled. He was awaiting trial for the murder when he died of pulmonary fibrosis in December 2008. Authorities believe Zorinsky was a serial killer. He is a suspect in several murders besides the ones he was charged with, and his own sister attributed as many as 10 homicides to him. Rosemary's remains have never been located, but foul play is suspected in her case due to the circumstances involved.
Number 6.
Lola was last seen at her home in the 200 block of Whiskey Mill Road in Clarksboro, New Jersey, at 11 p.m. on September 12, 1982. Her husband, George Carney, told her two children that she left home in the middle of the night, taking $17,000 and a handgun, and would not return. George was her fourth husband and the father of her youngest child. Lola left home driving a red 1973 Chevrolet Nova hatchback with the New Jersey license plate number 752RZD and a vehicle identification number, VIN, 1X17D3W289214. Neither she nor the vehicle have ever been seen again. The car did not belong to her, it was her sister's. Lola left her own car, an almost new Lincoln, behind. George refused to report Lola missing, her sister finally did on January 3, 1983. Lola and George often argued, and before her disappearance, Lola told her sister she was contemplating moving out of George's home and filing for divorce. She was very close to her children, however, and it would be uncharacteristic of her to leave them voluntarily for so long. She had 3 children, 2 of whom were living with her when she vanished. She vanished the night before they were due to start the new school year. George said Lola was having an affair with someone in September 1982. Lola had left her husband numerous times before, but she always took the children with her, and she always returned after a short time. She left her dentures behind when she went missing. George says she had a new set made before she disappeared, but this has not been confirmed. Lola has not renewed her driver's license or used her social security number since her disappearance. George later divorced Lola on grounds of desertion. She was declared legally dead in 1990. Investigators bored through some concrete near Lola's house in 2004, but they found no evidence related to her disappearance. Police believe she is missing under suspicious circumstances and was probably murdered.
Number 7.
Amanda was last heard from on May 2, 2000. She resided in a rented home on Greenwood Place in Flemington, New Jersey. During the early morning hours, she chatted on the internet with a friend from Texas about Amanda's plans to take her children and move to Arizona, the place of her birth, to live with her father. She was upbeat at the time and looking forward to the move. Amanda spoke to a Canadian friend on the phone before going to bed at 6:30 a.m. She has never been heard from again. Amanda's husband, Matthew Carroll, a Marine Corps captain, was named as a suspect in her case several months after her disappearance. He and the couple's 2 young daughters were visiting his parents in New York on the day she was last heard from. Amanda married Matthew when she was 16 years old. The relationship was reportedly happy until the family moved to New Jersey 6 months prior to her disappearance, at which point Amanda became depressed and decided to leave her husband and seek a divorce. The police were called to their residence 2 days before her disappearance due to a domestic dispute, but no violence had occurred and no charges were filed. Matthew has never been charged in Amanda's case and has stated he believes she left of her own accord, possibly with someone she met on the internet. Authorities have investigated all of her known internet acquaintances, however, and cleared them of involvement in her case. Her disappearance remains unsolved.